Alright, so I actually grew up playing the Mario Party games. And I have a bit of an odd history with them. Because the only ones I ever actually owned until recently were 2 and 6. However, a friend of mine had pretty much all of the other ones except for 3, which I actually rented once when I was a kid. Actually, I also had 8 later on, and that one was used to host several parties, actual parties with friends that we played a few times. But the majority of these up until 8, or sorry, 9, I did have experience playing with friends, but everything else I pretty much was forced to play solo. Anyway, today we're going to rate these games. I did want to do it with someone else, but I haven't really found anyone that played the majority of these, so I'll be doing another one solo. Anyways, to start off, Mario Party 1. Yeah, this one was a bit clunky, but to be fair, it was the first one, and it was a very unique concept at the time. As far as I know, it hadn't been done before. Like, it's not the first party game, quote-unquote, but it is the first one that had combined board game with mini games. And I think it deserves some leeway for that. I also think that this one deserves some recognition because it does something that the other games didn't. This one was pretty cutthroat. Yeah, it was very easy to steal large chunks of coins from opponents, and the minigames can be rather brutal. It wasn't really a quote-unquote equalizer like the later games are, but I can appreciate it just for being the most competitive out of all of them. I had a pretty good set of minigames, decent presentation for an N64 game, and it had the most boards out of all of them, with a whopping 8, plus the trial board, which actually technically gives it 9. The problem is these boards are kind of hit and miss. Like, they were either good or bad. There's maybe like one that was in between. It also had the worst board in my entire Mario Party history, which is the birthday cake. That one can screw right off. But for the sheer amount of content, the uniqueness, and the fact that it's cutthroat, I think it deserves an A rank, despite the fact that it's aged kind of poorly. 2, on the other hand, this was the one that most people, including myself, look back with fondness as one of the best. It took a lot of issues that 1 had, improved it, and this is the first one where Mario Party truly became the great equalizer. Added items into the mix, while a good chunk of the minigames are rehashed from the first game, the vast majority of them are improved and made better, apart from maybe a couple like Hangar Havoc. And most of the new ones are also pretty good. The boards, even though it's down to 6 plus the trial board, all of them are good. They're all pretty solid. Even the worst one, which is the mystery one, is at least okay. It's not worth playing compared to the other ones, but the fact that it isn't bad is impressive. The only issue I have with this is the fact that the minigame adventure mode, which I forgot to touch on when talking about 1, which I enjoyed quite a bit, it was toned down to where it was just a linear path instead of a choose your own adventure route where you can tackle them in a different order. But apart from that, I can't have anything to complain about, and I would still say this is the best Mario Party game and deserving of the S tier. 3, on the other hand, I don't know why this game was made, at least for the 64. This game should have been held back for the GameCube. It doesn't... The only thing new it really adds, apart from throwing Daisy and Waluigi into the mix, was it did have a proper story mode, which I appreciate. But it got rid of the minigame adventure mode in favor of the duel mode. And the duel mode, while I think they were trying to go for something strategic, the randomness of it just made it really not fun to play. Plus, the boards all suck. Now, it did add proper dual minigames compared to 2, but again, this just wasn't worth the downgrade. Especially because most of the boards are just kind of meh. None of them are really bad, but none of them are memorable. Like, if I had to choose any of them to go back to on the N64, this wouldn't be one of them, but it's a fairly solid game. I'll give it a B. It's just, why did it need to exist? And now we come to one that's notoriously bad, and that is Mario Party Advance. Oh boy. Again, this is another why did this have to exist? It completely got rid of the entire point of Mario Party and made it single player focused, which I would be okay with, but the problem is it barely resembles Mario Party to where it may as well have been its own game. And that game sucks. I'm sorry. The story mode is just bad. You constantly having to restart it because of your moves being limited. The mini games are all boring. And if you want to play the limited multiplayer modes, you had to have 4 systems, 4 copies of the game, and plus the link cable. Nothing good about that game. F tier. And then we have an e-reader spinoff, which is also for the GBA, but like with all e-reader games, I barely counted, didn't play it, and I doubt anyone else really did. Now, Mario Party 4 was the first one from the GameCube, and it definitely felt like this one was kind of made to be like, so we can have a Mario Party on the GameCube. It doesn't really do anything new apart from the mushroom. The shrink and growth mushroom system, which I did not like. Constantly having to get these things to either steal coins or take the secret path instead of use a key was just not fun. It did have a proper story mode, like 3. It wasn't particularly good. The boards are pretty decent, I will give it that. The mini games were kind of hit and miss. I think it's a C tier because why would you, apart from being the first on the GameCube, there's just not much reason to play it. Since everything that came before it was better, and most of the GameCube games that came after were also better. I don't know. The minigame shortage just didn't help it. There's just a lacking of content in general. 5, I used to have pretty good memories of this one. I thought the boards were fairly decent. The minigames were hit and miss. But I did enjoy the extra modes. The battle mode was fun. And I really liked the ice hockey minigame, although that was done better in Sports Mix. However, I replayed it recently, and yeah, I kind of wiped a bit of nostalgia off. It is better than 4, but I don't know, it wasn't... Maybe it's partially because the presentation is really cringy, and has probably the worst OST in the entire series. Also has the worst story mode, because who thought it would be a good idea to have to race 3 enemies around and constantly take their coins out through dual minigames was fun. I'd say it would be a low B, because again, apart from that, the presentation and the story mode, it's better than 4, and I did appreciate the extra modes, but 6, on the other hand, this is probably the best of the GameCube games. The day-night mechanic added some interesting dynamics. The boards are all pretty solid, the minigames are good. Not a big fan of the presentation, because like with 5, it's kind of a bit too sugary. The story mode is a joke. Well, it's not even really a story mode, it's just a single-player offering, but it's a joke. Only 3 boards, and it's to be finished really quickly, and if you just get unlucky and go over the end space, you lose everything you gained and have to start completely over. But if you're gonna play with one of the GameCube games with a group of friends, this is the one to go with. I'll give it an A. 7, this, like with 3, I have to ask, why did this need to exist? It did shake things up a bit more than 3 did, because there is one map that plays standard Mario Party, which go around, collect stars, 20 stars each, or 20 coins per star. However, the other boards all had different objectives, like getting to the end and buying a star. That was pretty hit and miss. I think 8 did that better. But the minigames were kind of bleh. The story mode, once again, was a joke. I would say this one goes in the B between 3 and 5. It was alright, but it was another case of why did we need 4 games in the GameCube when most of them play for the most part the same? And that one wasn't even the best. Now to the handheld ones, this still raises the question of why we even needed handheld Mario Party. Like, I guess if you're having a car trip with siblings, sure, but the problem with that is you need 4 DSs. Now, unlike with Advance, you only need 1 copy of the game thanks to download play, although I don't know how limited that was because I didn't get a chance to ever play this multiplayer. You didn't... Again, you still needed 4 systems, so if you had siblings, that was a no-go, but I guess you've got 4 friends that all had DSs, which probably wouldn't be that hard to do since how popular this system was to really get that full feeling, but it's just, again, why do we need this? The story mode was pretty crap, so, you know, the single-player offering, which I guess most people are going to be spending a lot of time with, wasn't particularly good. Boards were okay. Went along with that 7 and 8 vibe of having different objectives per board. Minigames, this is where I had a problem with the game. The minigames were kind of bad. They went primarily for system-exclusive features, which is the stylus, which is fine. It's a fine experiment, but a lot of the stylus games just did not read properly for me. So I had issues with them, and even if I didn't, the minigames weren't particularly fun for the most part. Presentation was kind of bad because, you know, early DS graphics weren't the greatest thing. Unless you took full advantage of it like, say, Phantom Hourglass did. I'm going to put this in C under 4. A lot of people say this is the best handheld one, and I can see why I disagree with it, but I'll get into why later. Now, 8. 8, I think, was treated unfairly. A lot of people don't like it because of all the minigames being motion controller focused, I presume. I heavily disagree. I think this was the perfect thing to have primarily be motion controller based. Some of the minigames did have issues, like there were a couple that were primarily replaced the button mashing mechanics of earlier games with literal waggles. Not only is that not fun, it had issues like playing some of the stylus games. However, when it was used properly and in interesting ways, a lot of the minigames can be quite fun. It had a decent presentation, though the graphics were kind of bland. And stupidly enough, like, good chunks of the screen were unused by borders. I never understood that. However, it did have an issue with frame rates. Thankfully, when you're playing minigames, it's not an issue, but on menus and boards, it really chugged. I don't know why when it looked worse than the GameCube ones. But I guess maybe it was rushed. It did have some good extra modes. The story mode was okay. The big hat guy was annoying. But other than that, it was pretty standard. This is the last one to use the objective-based board system in a traditional Mario Party, and I did think this one did it the best out of all of them, even if one of them is pretty much Monopoly. I had a lot of fun with it. I think this one deserves an A tier because it used motion controls pretty well for the most part out of a select few waggle games. And the boards were all pretty solid. It was easy to get a group of friends going because how popular the Wii was, and you didn't need to use the nunchucks, since if most people had an extra controller, they had an extra Wiimote. And given the fact that I had a friend who had 2 extra Wiimotes, we also played this one quite a bit when I hosted IRL parties. And for the most part, it worked. We had fun. Easy to get going. Everyone had a Wii, everyone had a Wiimote. And it kept the great equalizer system going, because most people who didn't pick up a regular controller could get behind the motion controls. It did its job, and it did it well. Now, 9, yeah. This is where we start having problems. On the plus side, it looked better, and it ran a hell of a lot better than 8 did. So, presentation, better. Story mode, also better. However, this is where we had the Mario Party system come in. Now, when I first played this, my thought process was, I like the idea of going to the end of a long board instead of going in a circle. However, the car mechanic of everybody moving at the same time was just stupid. Like, turn order could often make or break the game, and just that wasn't fun. And a lot of people agree. It was an interesting idea, but very poorly executed. It also didn't help that the minigames were kind of blah. Most of them did not use motion controls, unlike 8, so you're holding the controller to the side. Now, granted, it was easy to get a party game going for the same reason as 8, because likewise, it didn't use the nunchuck for the most part. But it was a massive downstep from 8 in every way that wasn't visual. So, into the D tier you go. 10, presentation lacking. However, even though it was another Mario Party game, I think this was the better of the two. The Bowser mode was actually pretty fun, at least for single player. And I never got to play this with other people. But they did an interesting job of creating an asymmetric mode, even though it was still Mario Party. Of one person getting to be Bowser and just destroy the other at 4. The problem is that only 3 of the 5 boards are available, which, by the way, is another problem. This is the one to start having only 5 boards. None of them were particularly great, though. Only the airship one was particularly bad, so 4 of the 5 were decent. Minigames were pretty alright. Hit and miss. Some of the Bowser mode ones were also hit and miss. But that's where I spent most of my time with this game, was in the Bowser mode. I would say this one deserves the bottom of C, since they took what 9 did and made it better, even though it's still Mario Party. If you're going to play one of those, that's the one to play. And again, the Bowser mode was an interesting asymmetric choice. I just wish the presentation was better. It didn't lack proper single player mode. It had more content. I would have been a bit kinder to it, but I still think it's better than 9. Island Tour. This is where I break with a lot of popular opinions again. I had a lot of fun playing this. I wish I could play this one with other people. I don't know how limited download play is, but like with DS, you know, one person needs to own the game, everybody else just needs to own a system, though that may be a bit harder to do since the 3DS sold about half as well as the DS did. Now, here's where I break. It used the Mario Party board layout of going through one long board. Got rid of the car mechanics. So it was basically classic Mario Party going in a line. Now, the boards are smaller than they were in 8 and 9, 9 and 10, but I think that worked to its favor, since if you're going to play this on like a car trip or at a convention or something, you never know when you're going to need to stop. So smaller bite-sized games, I think, did it well. Plus, the minigames are mostly pretty good. The presentation was alright, even though it did have that standard Mario spin-off look that a lot of them shared. The Bowser Tower could have been better, but I appreciate the fact that they brought back the minigame adventure finally. I had fun with it. I'm breaking with the people. You know what? I think it's better than 5 even. Because I did enjoy the linear maps. The minigames are all good. And, you know, Bowser Tower. I think that game was really treated unfairly, and people need to... I think it deserves a second chance. I think everybody just assumes it was Mario Party when it wasn't. Or went with Star Rush and decided that one was also bad by association. I fully recommend giving that one another chance, or playing it if you haven't already. Now, the problem here is the other 3DS game, Star Rush. Ooh. Oh, this one was bad. Not only do you have to unlock most of the modes through grinding, the one that's unlocked by default, the Toad one, it freaking sucks. And that, you can tell that's where they put most of the effort, because it has the most boards available. However, all of the boards are bland. It was an interesting idea to have everyone move at the same time, but it's just not fun. The minigames mostly suck. It did have a better OST than the majority series, I'll give it that. However, F tier. It's better than Advance because it did at least try some different things without completely breaking away from what Mario Party is. But it's still not good. And most of the sub-modes, like the rhythm one, also suck. Yeah, I do not recommend trying it. It's better than Advance, but that's all I can give it. Now we have 100. This was a controversial one because the whole point of Mario Party is minigames and boards. Now, it did have 100 minigames in it, but there's no boards, which means unless you're playing with other people, it's kind of pointless. I do appreciate this is the last one that had a more proper minigame adventure, but I feel like that was kind of put in there because what else are they going to do? I don't know. I feel like just doing it the way they did kind of neutered it. And this would have been a good one to have contender for online play, but, you know, people have been asking for that since 8, probably. But they didn't do it. So, once again, you have to have other people that have 3DSs, and I don't think this one even had download play. Into the D tier you go. The only reason I'm not putting an F is because it's better than Star Rush in Advance. Now, here's a bit of an interesting one. Super Mario Party and Superstars. They both share a bland presentation. They look very similar, however, it was Super. The problem is there are only 4 boards and they're quite small. I think they were taking inspiration from Star Rush. However, I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be. I think they did add online play later, but it's kind of limited. I never tried the online play. I played some of it by myself to play like the river rafting mode. The sub modes are kind of hit and miss. I don't like the fact that you have to play through the team battle to get to the credits. Because playing through the same 4 boards twice, and one of them being team battle, which isn't fun, kind of sucked. But the main mode is okay. I did get to play this with my fiance, and we had some fun. I will give it credit though, I don't like the fact that you're forced to play with a single Joy-Con. If you have a Pro Controller, you should be allowed to use it, or if you're playing solo, you should be able to use it with a grip. However, I will give it one thing. The fact that it does that, if you have a single pair of Joy-Con on the side, you can get a 4-player game going. Or, if you know someone else that has a Switch, they get 2 Joy-Cons by the default. So, with 2 Switches, you could easily get a 4-player game going, or just an extra pair of Joy-Cons. This is probably the most accessible out of all of them, and for that, I think it deserves at least a C. I think it's better than 10. And I would even say it's better than DS. Inferior to 4 because of the lack of content, bland presentation, the boards kind of suck. But for the accessibility and the ease of getting a good 4-player game going, I think it's at least an okay game. Now, Superstar, I have mixed feelings about. They finally added full online play, which is like, why did it take you that long to do it? Now, it's back to its roots, which I think everyone appreciated, and pretty solid content. The problem is most of it's recycled, which I think was the point. It was a celebration of the older games. The big problem I have is, even though it's based off of Mario Party 1 with its influence, they didn't bring back the minigame adventure mode. There are extra modes like the survival minigame mode, which I think is the only thing people really play online these days, unless you're playing with friends. But the other problem I have is there's only 5 freaking boards across the 3 games. And Mario Party 3 got the short end of the stick because not only is there only 1 board, but of all the ones there, they chose freaking Woody Woods, the blandest of the bland. It's not a terrible map, but it's... why? That was the most bland map in 3, probably the most bland map in the entire series, and you chose that one. That being said, they also chose the birthday cake, which is the worst map from 1, and the worst map in the entire series, I'd argue. So, you're limited to pretty much just 3 boards, unless you just want to play the mediocrity that is Woody Woods, or punish yourself with the birthday cake. But thankfully the other 3 they chose were pretty solid, so, it is what it is. They really should have added a couple of boards through free DLC, since this is like another multiplayer game in that trend of them drip feeding free DLC to pad out being able to rush the game out quicker. I think it's a B rank since what content is in there is pretty solid and they finally added online play. I would say it's between 3 and 7. Oh, I just wish the online was a bit more robust. Maybe with Mario Party whatever they're going to call the next one, they'll give it more content and make the online, I guess, more accessible, more robust, something. Because it did have some problems with lag issues as well. When it ran fine, but when someone was lagging, oof. Some of the minigames were downright unplayable. But yeah, that's the one on the Switch I would recommend getting. But anyways, those are the Mario Party games. It's been pretty hit and miss with me. But when I play with other people, you can generally have a good time. And they don't call the series the Great Equalizer for nothing, because people that are casuals actually stand a chance against experienced players, although they might get whooped in the minigames. Luck turning around on the boards can give them a win. But yeah, that's Mario Party, and that's my views on it. I think next I may be doing the RPG series, but we'll see.